Chair Rivera, we're live.
Thank you. Let's call a Public Works and Utilities Committee regular meeting for September 26, 2023 to order. We have a roll call, please, Ms. Wheeler, Director Wheeler.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Councillor Romero Worth,
I'm here.
Councillor Lee Garcia,
Here.
Councillor Michael Garcia,
Present.
and Councillor Amanda Chavez
She's excused.
and Chair Rivera.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Any changes from staff, Director Wheeler?
No changes from staff, Mr. Chair.
Anything from the committee? Wishes of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion for approval with a second of the agenda. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Approval of the consent agenda. Any changes from staff?
No changes from staff, Mr. Chair.
All right, and I heard from Jamie Ray that items G, K, L, and M have been pulled. Are those correct by committee members? I don't know who pulled them, but all four of them, Counselor?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, so G, K, L, and M. Is there anything else members would like to pull? All right, what are the wishes of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
As amended.
The motion to approve is amended with a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? See none, motion carries. Presentation informational items. I don't see Bill here. He may think the meeting's at 5, so we'll proceed and see if he gets here before the end of the meeting. So we'll go on to the first item pulled, which was item G. Request for approval of general services contract with Duke's Root Control to provide chemical root control for the city sewer system in the total amount of $1 million for a 4-year term via HGAC cooperative agreement. And Mr. Heerbrandt's here for staff. Councillor Michael Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Heerbrandт, for being here this evening. Just got a couple quick questions for you to clarify for the public. Because this is a relatively newer process for us, for the city, and just want to make sure that the chemicals being used to address the root clogging problems in the sewers is going to be safe in the sense that a lot of the water eventually will make its way to the river, and some of those chemical compounds might make its way into the river as well. And so I guess the question revolves around safety. If, you know, these chemicals stay within the water and the water gets disposed into the river, does it provide any harm for any of the animals, whether it be animals living in the water or drinking from the water, any type of environmental hazard with the chemicals that will be used?
No, sir. This particular chemical that they use has been approved
Is
for
your,
this use.
Is your microphone on?
Yes, it's on.
You
Lights
may
lit.
just need to get a little bit closer.
How about this?
Yeah.
Okay, the chemical that is used is biodegradable. By the time it reaches a treatment plant, there's no trace of the original chemical. It's been broken down by the time it gets there.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then the second part of the question I have is that you're requesting a bar and it's coming from the cash balance to fund the contract. What do you mean by the cash balance? Is it just coming from?
The wastewater management division has a cash balance
Okay.
from their income.
Thank you. I definitely understood that, but it was more so for public consumption. That way the public is well aware of where it's coming from. So with that, thank you for the clarification, Mr. Heerbrandт. And no other questions from me, Mr. Chair. Move to approve.
Second.
A motion for approval in a second. Any further discussion? See none. Can we have a roll call, please, Director Wheeler?
Councillor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Councillor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
and Chair Rivera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move on to item K. Request for authorization to sell potable water to the Santa Fe Country Club and the MRC pursuant to chapter 25-4.1, rule 17 temporary and special services up to 700,000 gallons per day for the club and 1,400,000 gallons per day for the MRC at a rate of $6.06 per thousand gallons. The city's base rate for water in the event that the club or the MRC takes more water than their initial allotments, the base rate increases to $21.72 per thousand gallons thereafter, subject to the availability of potable supply and the unavailability of treated effluent. I don't know, it has John Dupuy listed. I don't know if he's on Zoom, if he's here.
Thank you, Chairman. We're checking Zoom right now. But my guess is he didn't realize the meeting was at 4.
Can make a motion to table while we figure to see if Director Dupuy can make it.
Thank you. We have a motion to table. Do we have a second? We have a second. Any further discussion? Could we have a roll call on that, Director Wheeler?
And this is a motion to table that we're calling a vote on right now. Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
and Chair Rivera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That has been tabled, so we'll move on to item L. Request for approval of professional services agreement with Carr Riggs Ingram for audit services for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023 in the amount of $269,454.42, including applicable GRT. Emily Oster supposed to be here for this one, unless someone from her staff is here. I don't see anybody here to answer questions for that, Counselor.
Happy to move to table it until we get to the end of the meeting. If not, we can remove it and address it accordingly.
All right, so we have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
Second. Discussion.
Discussion?
We will move this meeting to 4:00 and in the meantime, if we don't get anybody here by, do we have a time limit for this meeting? 5:00?
I believe it's 5:00. I know there's another meeting after this.
Okay,
That's why they moved us to 4.
understand. So then, we don't get anybody by then, I guess we just don't discuss it, or do we move this?
Well, we could make a motion to have it return, or it could depend on the sensitivity of the item. It may move on to the following committees. This one already went to finance. So it's probably already past that one committee. Is that true? So it can move on probably to governing body. It would be nice to hear it, but hopefully Ms. Oster's in the building.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? A motion to table. Could we have a roll call, please? Director Wheeler?
Certainly. And this motion is to table item
L.
L. Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Rivera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, on the item M, request for approval of amendment number 2 to service agreement 22-0301 with Condor New Age Logistics LLC for security service to increase the total compensation of the contract by $1,100,000 to a new 4-year total compensation of $5.5 million. Josh Bowman and Mr. Director Burnett are here to answer questions. Counselor Michael Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Bowman. I don't think we've met, so pleasure to meet you. Just got a quick question in regards to the additional allocation of $1.1 million, and it's basically doubling what is currently allocated. And so can you clarify what the justification for doubling the allocation for the fiscal year is?
Mr. Bowman, is the green light on at the base of it?
It is now.
There
You hear me?
Yes.
Yes, to answer your question, we took the 1.1 million that was allocated for allied security that was recently terminated with the city of Santa Fe and we allocated that towards Condor New Age Logistics. As we had that transformation, most of our facilities decided to go with Condor New Age for their excellent performance, their professionalism, and just their overall reliability and their service. And we want to make sure that we have enough bandwidth and funding available to make sure we can keep security going throughout the city.
Okay. Well, just wanted to clarify why we're doubling it, and I remember having the conversation around the concerns that some of us on the council had around Allied, and thank you for clarifying that. It's moving towards a vendor that we have confidence and faith in regards to the services that they provide. I would guess, I would only ask that if we get maybe some updates in regards to how it's working out. I know that there's supposed to be security services in particular areas that's assigned through this contract, and the plaza being one. And I've heard a lot of concerns from constituents around there being no type of presence, police presence, security presence, et cetera. And so if we could maybe in future, Mr. Burnett and Mr. Bowman, just get an update in regards to the impact they're having on the community, the type of activities they're conducting. I know that some are visiting parks, et cetera, and just it's always good for the public to know that the mitigation efforts that these security services are providing to the community, because sometimes when it's left unsaid, folks don't understand the work that they're preventing. And I think a lot of that is hopefully being conducted by the security services, but maybe some type of update would be helpful for folks. So with that, thank you for the clarification. I really appreciate the response to the answer. But then no other questions, Mr. Chair, move to approve.
Second.
Motion for approval with a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please, Director Wheeler?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Chair Rivera.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. I
you.
see Director Oster here. Director Burnett, before you leave, any luck getting hold of Bill Schneider?
No, sir, I texted, but there was no response. I walked out on the mall.
Thank you.
I texted John Dupuy as well about both of them.
Thank you. And if he needs to get on via Zoom, he can do that as well. All right, so Director Oster's here. Can we have a motion to remove item L from the table?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Director Wheeler.
Could I ask who did the second on that? Was I? Okay,
Counselor
Lee Garcia. Okay. Motion, and then, so on the motion to remove from the table item L, Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
and Chair Rivera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
So again, item L for the public is request for approval of professional services agreement with Carr Riggs Ingram for audit services for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023 in the amount of $269,454.42, including applicable gross receipts tax. Counselor Michael Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Oster, for being here. I apologize. We had the meeting probably earlier than you anticipated. It kind of threw us all a little through the loop having a 4 p.m. meeting. So thank you for coming and joining us. This contract is to be focused on our fiscal year 23 audit, which I guess my first question is, have we begun preparation work for that audit yet?
Mr. Chair and members of the Public Works and Public Utilities Committee, my apologies for being here late. I apologize that I wasn't here when you called my item, and thank you for tabling it so I could come back and speak with you about it. We have begun work on preparing for the FY23 audit. The Carr Riggs Ingram contract is for the audit itself. The auditors work on it. The consulting work that Clifton Larson Allen has been doing for us has been underway for quite a while now, since Clifton Larson Allen came on board in September of last year. So we have been preparing and working throughout FY 23 and since the end of the fiscal year to be audited for FY 23. This contract that's before you this evening is for the auditors to perform their work through FY 23.
Okay, thank you. And so Carr, Riggs and Ingram hasn't begun that work, or have they?
Mr. Chair and Councilor Garcia, they have not begun auditing FY 23.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Fiscal year 23 audit is due to the state auditor's office on December 15th. Am I correct on that date?
Mr. Chair and Councilor Garcia, that is the state auditor's deadline for municipalities, December 15th.
Okay. And so given that our target date for the fiscal year 22 audit is going to be December 24th, and per the information that was provided in today's New Mexican article, that the state auditor hasn't received any word from the city of Santa Fe around our fiscal year 23 audit, what is the likelihood that we're going to meet the fiscal year 23 audit deadline of December 15th established by the state auditor's office?
Mr. Chair and Councilor Garcia, so the quarterly audit status report that was due on September 15th is only required for audits that were not submitted by the deadline in the audit rule. So the audit for FY 23 isn't due yet. So the quarterly audit status report for September 15th only reported on FY 22 because FY 23 hasn't reached the deadline yet. So I wanted to clarify on that. As far as the probability that FY 23 will be submitted on time, I would say that we're working as hard as we can to finish both audits as quickly as possible. So I can't quantify it for you in terms of a percentage or probability, but we're doing everything we can. I feel comfortable telling you we're working as quickly as we can to complete both audits. Getting a contract in place with Carr, Riggs, Ingram for FY 23 is essential. You have to have that to move forward with 23.
Thank you, Director Oster. I appreciate that clarification. Just from my professional experience, conducting a full fiscal year audit in a roughly 11-day time period is almost near impossible. And during our last SWAMA meeting we had last Thursday, we got an update from SWAMA staff regarding, we were hoping to have the SWAMA update, fiscal year 22 update audit submitted on December 4th. And one of my colleagues on that committee had asked, what is the likelihood of SWAMA being submitted by the auditor's deadline? And we were given the update that that wasn't going to happen. Is there anything different than you can tell us? I think my concern is that I want to make sure we're being as clear and transparent with the public as possible in regards to the deadline. If we're not going to meet it, let's be proactive and tell the state auditor, let's tell the public, we've had this huge effort to get from underneath the ball of 2 late audits. And we're going to come as close to possible as to meeting the December 15th deadline, but we're not going to meet that. And I'd like for us to begin to prepare staff, the public and the state auditor with that information, because again, I'd want us to be proactive and ensure that we're doing everything we can, because as we're seeing now with the repercussions of our fiscal year 21 audit and funds being withheld and potentially funds being diverted elsewhere, this is a very consequential matter. And if I think from my professional perspective, we're not going to meet that December 15th date. Can you tell me anything otherwise that we are?
Mr. Chair and Councilor Garcia, I think that we're doing everything we can to complete all of the city's audits as quickly as we can. I can tell you that if this contract with Carr, Riggs, Ingram doesn't get approved, then we won't meet the deadline because we won't have an auditor. So the item that's in front of you is the contract to perform the audit for FY 23. The idea that the entire audit would have to be performed in the time period when between when the FY 22 audit is submitted and when the FY 23 audit is due. I disagree with that. I think that there's opportunity to do work on both years concurrently. So I think, we need to get the contract in place. We need to continue to move forward as quickly as we can. And I don't think it's correct to say that the entire FY 23 audit would have to be performed in the span of 10 days, 11 days between the target for submitting FY 22 and the deadline for FY 23. So I think that's not how the process works based on my experience.
I definitely understand where you're coming from, but there are certain figures, data, information that can't be utilized in the fiscal year 23 audit until 22 is complete. And from every expert I've talked to on this matter, that we're not going to meet that deadline. And I think I'm very disappointed that the administration is taking the stance that we're not going to say we're going to be late. I think it's beneficial to us as a government, it's beneficial to the public, and it's beneficial to our collaborative relationships with our external stakeholders through the state of New Mexico, whether it be the state auditor's office, DFA, that we're upfront and be real with them and let them know that, look, we're doing our best, as you said, but it's going to probably be turned in January sometime, or it's going to probably be turned in February sometime. I'm a bit surprised that we can't pinpoint the date for fiscal year 23 when we've already started to establish dates for fiscal year 22. And if we've had some context or some information that's otherwise that would allow us to verify and validate that we can meet that December 15th deadline, I'd like to know it. But from everything that is in front of myself as a policymaker, I don't think we're going to meet that date, and which ultimately would mean 4 years in a row we're late with the audit, 5 out of the last 6 years. And I think let's be proactive and be responsible about this. And I'm by no means am I saying you're not being responsible. What I'm saying is let's move forward in a direction that will allow the public to fully understand that we know the work in front of us, and we are going to provide the information to them that they are comfortable with. I think one of the unfortunate things throughout the untimely audit process is the lack of trust that's been afforded to the city in the sense, and by no means am I laying that on your shoulders, Director Oster. I think it's a collective thing where citizens are now questioning what's going on. And even through the letter through the DFA that was sent, and you've got suggestions that some of our capital outlay resources be taken under a different fiscal sponsor. That's huge. That is basically saying we don't trust you, City of Santa Fe, with the money. We're going to make you. We're recommending you somebody else manage your money until your house is in order. And I think that's where being proactive and saying, look, we're going to be late. We're doing our best, but we realize we're going to be late again would benefit us in the long run. And I would hope that we can begin to establish a deadline date for fiscal year 23. And so with that, I will move to approve because we need this contract. We need the work to get that ultimate work done. But we also need to be upfront and transparent with the external stakeholders, because it's not beneficial for us to just delay the inevitable, in my opinion, which is that fiscal year 23 is going to be late. And so with that, I'll yield the floor, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Oster. I really appreciate the information.
We did have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Council Romero Worth. Discussion, Council Romero Worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Oster, so the contract that's in front of us tonight can you explain a little bit? It's part of an RFP that's good for 4 years with Carr, Riggs, Ingram. But because of the auditor's rules, and because maybe give us some context, we have to approve this contract every year. We can't approve a contract for 4 years, even though we know we're going to be dealing with Carr, Riggs, Ingram for 4 years. Can you just maybe say that in a better way than I just did?
You got it exactly right, Counselor and Mr. Chair and Counselor Romero Worth. The state audit contract process is done under the authority of the Office of the State Auditor. And they have a rulemaking authority that they use to put in place the process, to define the process for contracting for audit services. And all government entities in New Mexico have to follow that process. And under that process that's defined by the audit rule, the maximum amount of time for a audit contract is 1 year. Now, they do allow you to do an RFP for longer, which we did. As you mentioned, the RFP was for up to 4 fiscal years. So we don't have to do another procurement every year, but we have to go through the contracting process. And it's specific only to audit contracts, and it's done using the state auditor's OSA Connect system. So it's a highly specialized process that's used only for audit contracts. And so the state auditor does allow you to procure for multiple fiscal years, but you have to contract for 1 year at a time.
Okay, and so Carr, Riggs, Ingram did the 2021 audit, which we've just submitted. They are currently under contract with us for the 2022 audit. And then this contract tonight would put them in place to do our 2023 audit, which has previously been noted is due December 15th. And then we would have 1 more year. They would be able to do under the RFP that we issued, they'd be able to do the 2024 audit.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Councilor Romero Worth, that's correct. It could be up to 4 years. At any point during that process, the city could choose to go back out to RFP. Just like with any other procurement, you can always choose to go back to RFP earlier, but that's the maximum amount of time.
But unlikely that we would do that because getting an auditor who is now up to speed on how the city works and what issues we have had and how they're being resolved, that's valuable in terms of their knowledge so that they know kind of how to do the audit and what they need to be looking at.
Mr. Chair and Councilor Romero Worth, yes, I would agree. The first year of an audit is the hardest because there's the most learning that's going on both sides. The auditee, the city is getting to know the way that Carr, Riggs, Ingram does things, and the auditor, Carr, Riggs, Ingram, is learning about the city and how we operate. And although Carr, Riggs, Ingram has extensive experience auditing municipalities, they hadn't audited the city of Santa Fe recently. So, they had some things to learn. There's also documents that are in effect for a number of years. For example, leases of city property typically have a term of 10 to 20 years. We have to gather all of those in the first year to provide them with that documentation, but they don't change on an annual basis for the most part. So for the second year and the third year, it's really just providing updated information and things that changed. But in the first year, it's, starting from scratch and building the audit files, including all those permanent documents that don't change very often.
Right. So we already have the first year under our belt with Carr, Riggs, Ingram. So that hard year you speak of, we've submitted that audit, and we are now working with them into our second audit. And I think tomorrow night you'll be giving us an update on where we are, but we're, I don't know, in terms of the process, moving along on that one pretty well, right?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Councilor Romero Worth, we are. I have been working with Clifton Larson Allen all afternoon on the FY 22 audit. We had our controller Josie Bolden and our treasurer Clarence Romero. We were working on, finalizing the last entries for the FY 22 audit. We also met with Carr Riggs Ingram earlier this afternoon. We had our weekly audit status. So, absolutely work is being done, and I do understand that it's not as fast as any of us would like it to be. And I can really assure you that I am motivated to get this
Yeah.
done.
I can
I
imagine.
want to put it behind me too. All of us do.
Yeah.
My whole staff, I think I can speak on behalf of the finance department to say that we want to move forward.
So, and the quarterly reports that we do to the state auditor, we're required to do that because we're late, correct?
Correct, Mr. Chair and Councilor Romero Worth. The quarterly audit status reports are required for audits that are not submitted by the deadline. So the only audit that we have right now that wasn't submitted by the deadline is FY 22. So that's our reporting is on FY 22.
Okay, so we've been reporting quarterly to the state auditor on our progress on the 2022 audit, which is the only one the city has currently that's late.
Yes, that is correct. The last quarterly report was due in June. And at that time, we still had FY 21 pending. So that report included both. But the most recent one from September was only for FY 22.
Okay, and that report, all those quarterly reports have been filed with the state auditor on time.
Mr. Chair and Councilor Romero Worth, that is correct. We have filed the March, June, and September quarterly status reports on time as required by the state audit rule.
Okay, and I mean, I guess we're, I think you in front of the finance committee, in front of the governing body, I mean, it's hard to pinpoint the exact date at which an audit will be completed because there is back and forth with you and our auditors. And, I mean, obviously they take time. I think you just in previous questioning suggested that there's some work that's going on simultaneously for both audits, the one that's due in December of 2023, which if it were submitted on the December 15th deadline would be on time. But that you're working simultaneously on that one and on the one from 2022 that is overdue.
Yes, Mr. Chair and councilors, that is correct. Carr Riggs Ingram is working on 22 and Clifton Larson Allen is preparing everything for 23. One of the other things about being in the second or third year of a relationship is that we have the prior year's PBC list prepared by client list that tells us what to expect, right? It might be a list of 200 documents and items that they're requesting. And we know that since they requested them for 21 and 22, we can anticipate that they're requesting them for 23 as well. So we can prepare, we can work ahead on 23.
Yeah, and I guess back to where I started, again, I think you've been reluctant to say a particular date for something because it is a hard thing to pin down. And I just want to, I guess, state that and validate that that's true. I mean, you can't just pick a date on the calendar and say, we will finish this 2022 audit on a certain date. I mean, I think maybe you've made some approximations. Maybe I'm wrong in that, I guess.
Mr. Chair and councilors, I think one of the reasons that I'm hesitant to say a date is because I'm not the only person working on this project, that it's a dynamic relationship with our partners, with our contractors, both the auditors and our audit support contractors. So, I think that we're all working as fast as we can. I know that's unsatisfying, and I wish that I had a more satisfying answer, but that is the answer that is true from my perspective. We're working as quickly as we can. All three parties are engaged. We're all motivated and focused on getting it done, and we're doing our best. So.
Right. And you have been giving both the finance committee and the governing body updates at each of our meetings as to your progress and where you are and what exactly you are doing, what your team is doing with the auditors at each of those meetings, correct?
Mr. Chair and Councillor Merworth, yes, I have provided an audit update at every governing body and every finance committee meeting this calendar year.
Yeah. And I appreciate those. And I hope that when you have a better sense of, whatever the exact date for filing the 2022 audit is, and when you have a better sense of how 2023 is going to follow, I hope that you'll bring that information to one of those updates, and probably both, actually, the finance committee and the governing body meeting, so that everybody knows exactly where we stand. And I agree that we are all ready to have this behind us, because there are a lot of other things to work on, and there are a lot of other things I would love to see your department doing. Being patient is super hard when there's so much work that needs to be done and we'd like to see done. And I know I feel the need to get these behind us. I know you do. I think the governing body as a whole can't wait, and I'm sure much of the city government is in that same position. So thank you and your team for your work. And I look forward to hearing from you again tomorrow night when you give us probably a little more detailed about exactly where you are on the 2022 audit. So thank you. Thank you for coming here tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any Councillor Lee Garcia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be brief. I thank you for the update and for being here for the item being pulled and having discussion, because without this discussion, a lot of times we don't know where we're at. And I think for the sake of transparency, it is important that we have this discussion. I know staff and the people that are directly involved with you are talking about this daily and weekly, and I understand and I realize you don't have a magic wand. You are human, and the reality is I think that we do owe it to our constituents and the taxpayers to kind of give them an idea of where we're at, and that we're not just not working on this. So I do appreciate the discussion. I think that's really where it comes down to. And, we just need to get these things finished up, because, obviously with the paper and all that stuff, it seems like these things start to bring more discussion and people start, raising more questions. But it creates waves. And at the same time, we have that responsibility. And so just to comment, I know that we do need to get this done. I can see where you are at, where we are, and I think target dates and trying to wrap our heads around where we're going to be without being held completely to that date. At the same time, we understand the steps and we know where we're at. So thank you for being here for the discussion. And those are just my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Michael Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think some of the discussion earlier spurred a question for me. And it just revolved around establishing deadline dates, and I can't, because I don't get the reports. And I think maybe that's a request, Director Oster. When the quarterly reports are sent to the state auditor's office, if the governing body can be sent a copy of that, I would really appreciate it. And the justification being forced so that when the state auditor, when we're late with an audit, the state auditor notifies us as the city council. Those letters are directed to us individually and not to city staff. So we're the ones who are held accountable. So I'd like to be kept in the loop in regards to the updates that are provided to the state auditor. But
Mr. Chair and Councillor Garcia, the quarterly report for September 15th and June 15th was sent to the full governing body on the day that it was submitted to the state auditor's office.
Okay.
In March, there was some confusion about whether or not that was allowed. It was clarified, and then going forward for June and September, it has been provided.
Okay. Thank you, Director Oster. And so in that September 15th report, it stated that the 22 audit will be submitted no later than December 4th, provided no significant challenges are encountered. So I find it a bit confusing, or I'm a bit perplexed why we can establish the date for one report, but not another. Whereas I'm also going back historically when we're addressing the fiscal year 21 and 22 audit. And I'm thinking this was back in the springtime frame when we had established that we would get reports, these past due audits submitted at the end of June. So I definitely understand we can't pinpoint a specific date, but there's nothing preventing us to say the work is ahead, and the work ahead, we believe we will get it accomplished by the end of February, the end of January. Not necessarily looking for a definitive date, ballpark would work. I think we know the work that lies ahead, and I definitely understand the work is being done, but I think we know the work, and we can understand and estimate it's going to take us X amount of time to get that work done. And I think that's the main question that is always at least perplexed a lot of my constituents is, how do we not know the work ahead to establish some deadline dates? I know, my day job, I'm constantly having to provide updates in regards to the work that's ahead and when I'm going to get it accomplished, because those are deliverables that are expected by management, and management's expecting it so they can deliver to their superiors all the way up the chain. And I think that's what I would hope we can get in the practice of. And again, there's nothing we need to do in regards to delaying the inevitable, because if we can work towards a date, it helps us to really establish that we're meeting this firm date that we've set, such as we did with the end of June for fiscal year 21, such as we're doing now with December 4th for fiscal year 22. And we can do the same with fiscal year 23. And I think there's nothing that prevents us from doing that. I think the challenge is, once we establish that date, it's going to be on December 15th. And I think from my perspective, it's going to be on that. And I want us to begin to start preparing the appropriate folks for that. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to ask additional questions.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Romero Worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the quarterly report said no later than December 4th. It could be December 4th, could be sooner.
Mr. Chair and Counselor, that's correct. It's very difficult to narrow down an exact date, and I will note that the quarterly report doesn't say that it will be submitted on December 4th. It says it will be submitted no later than December 4th.
So once we have that one, the 2022 audit submitted, we'll be in a position to give another window, right? So if it's submitted October 4th, which I have no information that it will be, but just pulling that out of the air, October 4th, that would help us set what will happen with the 2023 audit, correct?
Mr. Chair and Counselor Romero Worth, certainly completing the 2022 audit will give us more of a sense of the timeline for completing 2023. So the focus has to remain on getting 22 done, which is where we're working.
And when you have a better sense, you will bring that information to us, won't you?
Mr. Chair and Counselor Romero Worth, I certainly will.
Okay. And the only reason that we have a timeline out there for the 2022 audit is because it's late, and we are required by the state auditor to provide a quarterly report to say how we're doing and when we think it should be submitted.
Mr. Chair and Counselor Romero Worth, that is correct. And I would also like to note that the quarterly report is a document that's signed by both the entity and the auditor. And that section is the auditor's section. So it's not coming from me, it's coming from the auditor.
And so the auditor is saying no later than the 4th.
Yes.
Okay. And we already know that 2023 is due December 15th. And, when you know more about, when we know when we get this 2022 audit in, it'll help us understand what impact that has on 2023.
Mr. Chair and Councilor Romero Worth, absolutely, the sooner we finish FY 22, the more that'll help us with FY 23. But one thing that I can really tell you with absolute certainty is that we have to have an audit contract for FY 23 in
Right.
order to move forward with that audit. And so that item is, I respectfully request approval of the 23 audit contract. That is a step that has to happen.
Right, which is what's in front of us tonight, which is what you have to have in order to get that done. And I just would request that when you have a better sense of what's happening with 2023, are we going to be late? How much are we going to be late by? I hope you will bring it to us. So again, we can all be informed about kind of what we're looking at. And I know your team is working hard and I know you're working hard. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Any further discussion? All right, we have a motion for approval with a second. Do we have a roll call, please, Director Wheeler?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Chair Rivera,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Director Dupuy is here. Can we have a motion to get item K off the table?
So moved.
We have a vote on that.
Yes,
Director Wheeler?
sir. Yes, Mr. Chair. Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Rivera,
Yes,
motion passes.
thanks. So we're on item K, request for authorization to sell potable water to the Santa Fe Country Club and the MRC pursuant to chapter 25-4.1, rule 17, temporary and special services up to 700,000 gallons per day for the club and 1.4 million gallons per day for the MRC at a rate of $6.06 per 1,000 gallons, the city's base rate for water. In the event that the club or the MRC takes more water than their initial allotments, the base rate increases to $21.72 per 1,000 gallons thereafter, subject to the availability of potable supply and the unavailability of treated effluent. Director Dupuy is here. Councilor Michael Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Director Dupuy, how are you doing? Just got a quick question for you in regards to the rate. How do we establish the rate that's currently in the contract?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Garcia, the rate is our standard base rate for potable water, which is intended to cover the expenses associated with providing potable water to customers.
Okay, and this is a rate, can you tell me who else kind of currently utilizes this rate besides the proposed country club golf course and MRC?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Garcia, this rate is the base rate for all residential and other customers that are residential related, like multifamily, that type of thing. And there's variation in a few commercial classes, I believe, but I believe all residential use this as their base rate.
Okay, so this is besides the two proposed, I mean, for example, what does Marty Sanchez pay for their potable water?
I do believe Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, I do believe Marty Sanchez has a potable water meter, but it's not for this type use. It would be for commercial use, so it might be slightly higher, but it wouldn't be much more than the 606. And I don't know that information. I can get it to you, but it would be near that same amount for their base rate as well.
Okay, and then I guess the second part of the question is, there's a certain limit at a certain rate, and then once you exceed that, it almost triples the amount. Everybody that's using potable, are they held at that same rate, or is this, can you expand more a little for me, please?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Garcia, the increased amount occurs once the allocation specific to a customer's meter size is exceeded, and it's intended to be a conservation measure in its core to incentivize or penalize, whichever you want to look at it, use beyond what is expected.
Okay, And so the increase in rate is standard city policy and procedure across the board?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. With that, no other questions. Thank you, Director Dupuy. I'll go ahead and move to approve.
Motion for approval. Do we
Second.
the second, further discussion? See none, can we have a roll call? Please, Director Wheeler.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Rivera,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. Let's go back to the beginning of our agenda and we have a presentation informational items, a progress report on the city wellfield optimization program. Bill Schneider is here from Water Resources and Conservation. Thanks, Bill.
I'm going to share my screen and basically just walk the committee just through what I would say is a progress report on some recent developments and accomplishments. And before I do that, and can you see my screen? Yeah, there we go. Right. Has anyone on the committee actually seen the recent story map that we've sort of had a soft release? And if not, I just would like to walk you through it for 2 minutes. And we're proud to share that this was developed in-house with a recent strategic hire, Francesca Shirley, who has brought a lot of talent to our group. So basically what this story map is designed to do is to share to your constituents, to our clients at Water, a better understanding in a very brief manner, the city's water supply. And so what it's designed to do basically is articulate in brevity sort of how the city water system has evolved and where we're going in the future relative to future planning and endeavors to build greater resiliency on our water supply system. So if you see to this screen and is that basically this story map can be read at the pace of which any user wants to go through and review in detail. So it basically touches on the 4 sources of supply, starting with the Santa Fe River. And then what we're going to talk about today, the city wells, which were installed in the 1950s during a very extreme drought. And then in the 1970s, the Buckman well field. So there's been this progression of adaptation relative to expanding our supply, building resiliency. The 50s and 1970s were severe drought. And then as the millennial drought started in the early 2000s, as we're well aware, then we pivoted to the Buckman direct diversion to access the city's San Juan Chama project water. So I just basically wanted to share with you this, what I think is a great resource that gives a bit of history, but more importantly, plans for our future sort of hardening of our system, if you will. And so I will share at the end of my presentation a link to that. It's on our website. Thought you might appreciate knowing that that exists. So I'm going to stop sharing and go to the presentation. All right. And so basically, and this is the link, and I'll email it to everybody on the committee. So we've seen this graphic multiple times, and I like it because it demonstrates the footprint of Santa Fe's water supply, even as it extends up north into Colorado. But tonight, we just wanted to hone in on sort of our unforgotten and yet extremely important and reliable water supply source, which is the city well field. Zooming in closer, and again, giving credit to, our predecessors in water and here at the city, this well field was done in an emergency authorization in the 1950s. So basically all these wells for the most part were drilled and installed along the Santa Fe River, knowing that there was an ancestral river channel. There was a hydraulic connection to the Santa Fe River, likely you would find water. And they were successful at that, thankfully. So historically, again, another slide Jesse shared in our What's Up with Water seminar. And this is a 100-year record of water production, which is pretty fascinating again. But in the 1920s, basically the only source of water supply was the Santa Fe River. And then here in the 1950s, during that extreme drought, the city wells came online. And amazingly, to share with you, some of the wells that were installed in the 1950s are actually still actively used. So we've certainly got a great benefit from that investment. Now, Jesse's always sort of illustrated this concept of this pivoting from groundwater, which basically by the 1990s had gotten to the point where we were effectively mining the aquifer, that so much pumping was happening, not sufficient recharge was occurring, and we were creating subsidence, particularly at the Buckman well field. Thankfully, with the Buckman direct diversion coming online, we have now accomplished a reduction of groundwater pumping close to 70% now. It's really, really remarkable. And I want to share some great news on that. Again, this is just to illustrate this 20-year record. Prior to the Buckman direct diversion, we were averaging about 4 million gallons a day of pumping in the city wells. We're basically down below 1. And for the past 7 years, on average of less than 500,000 gallons. So a dramatic reduction, just to emphasize that point. And what this graphic illustrates is the success that comes with a resilient and conjunctive water strategy that the city has implemented since the BDDs come online, which is a balanced portfolio. And in reducing groundwater pumping, what this color flood map shows is the recovery of the water table within the city because that pumping has been so greatly reduced. And in some cases, it's almost close to 100 feet. So it's very dramatic. And so if we're able to maintain this balance, if you will, of conjunctive water use, things look very promising in the city well field. Not that we should slow down on our efforts to improve upon it. And I want to hit, that's really the key sort of message in this presentation. All right, so I had to put this together because in some ways it's almost like remarkable how much is going on with the support of John, Jesse, and our group. This is just a list of active plans that are occurring right now at the city water department. And I'm only touching on the 9th one, the city well field optimization, but these are so much intertied. I wanted to share with you how active all these processes are, and these will be woven together very tightly during the Santa Fe 2100 water planning. So that we're viewing that as sort of the umbrella of which all this planning is going to be integrated. And with the intention of really managing our water resources in the most optimal way possible. So this was one plan that we developed in 2018 that basically gave us sort of a roadmap to work on optimizing and improving the city well field. What was the driver to this? And I give an immense amount of appreciation to the leadership of Marcos Martinez in the fact that the city achieved an unprecedented permit on the Northwest well. That was a supplemental well to a licensed permit, the city well field permit, that gave us certainty on the amount of water in which we were permitted to pump on any given year. I don't have time to go into specifics. We did share that with the committee back in 2019. But what was the driver now was with that certainty, we wanted to impose sort of a strategic initiative to look at well rehabilitation in the city well field, well replacement, water quality analysis and improvement, distribution system upgrades, permit enhancement. So this is a really sort of very thorough integrated strategy. And I'm proud to report to you that we've made significant progress. This wasn't a plan that sat on a shelf. So, and I'll give you one great example on the Torreon well, which is along the Santa Fe River, as I had previously showed. We went and did a very aggressive treatment. We effectively brushed the well. We put citric acid in there to remove some of the iron precipitates that were on the well screen. Then we pumped it aggressively. And in the process of doing that, we increased the yield almost twofold, which again, through maintenance and effort, very inexpensive, got an immense amount of improvement. And we improved the water quality as well. So that it was just I would just illustrate as a very low cost, high improvement success story. We did something similar on the Osage well. Now that's a well that is almost sort of underutilized because it's limited by its particular permit requirements. So we're working with the legal team and are seeking to basically re-permit that well as part of the city well field, with the hopes of managing in a more sustainable manner pumping within the city limits. And I'm going to share why that's so critical. Another thing that's happened is we have some wells that basically are past their life cycle. They basically have to be replaced. And so through our CIP program, we're looking to basically develop engineer designs, which we have one for the Ferguson well. We're at the 60% phase at the St. Michael's well. These are things that are so critical and important. And then something to share that has been in conversations is water quality. And one of the things that we did was a comprehensive well sampling on all our supply sources, including the city wells. And all our wells came back below any criteria that would be considered not safe for drinking, including for PFAS. Okay, so that's a really important sort of new development because that's been an unregulated contaminant. And I'm going to be working with Marcos to come back to the larger group here in the near future to share the results of that study and make that an independent presentation. So moving forward, we will be coming back to the committee seeking your guidance and approval with recommendations to do some additional work. We have old legacy wells that have been effectively inactive that need to be abandoned. Wells can serve as conduits for chemicals to go down into the aquifer. So it's really important that wells that are sort of past their lifespan, there's a plan through the state program of plug and abandonment. We want to basically seek replacement of 2 water supply wells. The St. Michael's and Ferguson, those are in District 1 and 2 respectively. And there's a whole process that we're going to have to follow to do that: community outreach, public notice, permitting. So there's a lot of work to be done on that. And I just want to bring this committee up to speed that that is our intention, that we'll be coming forward with a request to do replacement. As I mentioned, re-permitting the Osage well is in process. It's with legal right now. And then something I want to touch on, which is the wellhead protection plan, which we're trying to update. And then a specific response to a question from Chair Rivera is, what is the status of the Santa Fe well? And so let me go to that. And then I want to come back to sustainable aquifer management. So about 9 months ago now, I guess I had come before this committee and shared some updates on basically challenges of living in a capital city that had some industry, mostly gas stations, dry cleaners, and we have had some identified chemical spills into the aquifer. Never a great situation. And in specific, as one is at the Santa Fe generating station off of Baca Street. This has been a long-standing issue. We spoke about this. I am happy to report that effectively 2 developments have occurred. One is we are working with the Environment Department to have PNM pay and install 3 monitoring wells to identify the nature and extent of the chemistry or the plume that are off-site. They've done a pretty intensive investigation on-site. The concern we have is the threat of that groundwater plume that slowly migrates to the aquifer, heading towards our very important water supply wells, and Agua Fria being one and Osage being the other. So we're in the process of getting those wells in place so we can better identify the risk and vulnerability. And we're also in preliminary discussions with PNM to seek a replacement well for the Santa Fe well. So that well, and I'm sort of have this on the map. I know it's hard to see. It's a little washed out with the light, but you can see it on the south side of this map, that green dot. So that well has had contamination. And so it's our intent is to never need to use that well again, but we are requesting that PNM replace it. And so we're at the attorney's office trying to basically reach a settlement. Now, a new development, relatively new, that's a bit more problematic is on Cerrillos. And it's near the college, the former College of Santa Fe. Basically near behind the Smiths, near Chick-fil-A, just giving you a reference. But there was a former dry cleaner there that operated in the 1970s through the 1980s. And there's been investigation and some remediation, but there's pretty elevated concentrations of perchloroethylene, orders of magnitude above the drinking water standard. At this stage, we have no known threat to any of our water supply wells, but the nature and extent of that plume is currently unknown. So just want to bring that to your attention. We're basically trying our hardest to work through what's called the voluntary cleanup program that the Environment Department operates to get some action on trying to address the nature and extent of that plume. So I feel like I've probably used my time up. But one of the things I want to leave as a parting thought was a resolution that was put forth in 2017. And it sort of ties to improve ways to manage the Santa Fe River. And as I kind of highlighted back in the 1950s, there was a strategic thinking of putting the city wells along the Santa Fe River because of the connection between surface water and groundwater. One of the ideas that we will be looking as adaptations under the Santa Fe 2100 water plan is, are there ways to improve and utilize the living river as a way to create an aquifer storage and recovery project within the city well field? So meaning is any water that's infiltrating through as it flows through the city limits along the Santa Fe River, we're measuring and monitoring that and quantifying the amount of that water. And with that, we could potentially seek an application to basically claim that water through an ASR project for greater resiliency for climate change, fire, is to have that water in reserve for a time of need. So I only bring that to you just because it is very strongly intertied with the city well field. It's something we're continuing to study and getting very good information. So with that, I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you for the update on the Baca Street well is what I always called it, but I guess it's the Santa Fe well. I'm glad we're making some progress with PNM on that one. Any other questions? Councilor Michael Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Schneider, for the update too. I was looking forward to the update on the Baca Street well and I was trying to remember the last presentation you gave. There was a report or assessment that was being conducted. I think that you said would be available in about April of this year. Was that report completed?
Thank you, Chair and Councilor Garcia. That is correct. And thank you. I did not mean to overlook that. We did receive that report. We reviewed it. We provided comments, and that then triggered this request and approval to get these additional monitoring wells at our request to better define the nature and extent of that chemical plume.
Okay, thank you for that. Is that report accessible to us or the general public or?
Yeah, Chair, Councilor, yes, it is part of the public domain. I'd be happy to share it with you.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay.
Follow-up to that was, I know some of the concerns, last report was that the environmental department was a little hesitant to come to the table, and now that they've, in this recent report that you gave today, they're coming to the table and working collaboratively with us. Is that successful or is it hesitant on their behalf? How is that relationship working out?
I would say it's improved. Again, like we're being very patient because we've turned the Santa Fe well off in November of 2013. So we've basically stranded an asset. And again, this is just from the water division perspective for a decade. This investigation has been going on for 30 years. It was captured in the acquisition from PNM when the city acquired the water company. It was a known site issue. But the problem is, the more we look, unfortunately, the more we find.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. And then the additional plume that was brought to our attention today was the one around the South College Plaza area. Definitely know that location. I remember that dry cleaner business. And you know, the immediate concerns that come up for me is the redevelopment of the Midtown campus and the impacts that this plume can have on that campus. And it could be very detrimental to the success of that project. And so I guess what mitigation efforts are being planned, potentially being planned? What are the next steps given I mean, it is feet away, I would say within 50 feet to the Midtown campus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Counselor. I share those concerns as well, given the close proximity as you identified. So let me just share with you that there's been some remediation work already implemented through the VCP, Voluntary Cleanup Program. So what they basically did is install what's called a vapor extraction system, where they put sort of shallow wells and they put a vacuum on it and they try to suck the contaminant out of the vadose zone. So that's unsaturated. It's above the aquifer. They're looking now to inject an amendment into the groundwater with the intention of bioremediating it. In all fairness, we don't really have a voice. We provide comments, we provide recommendations. My professional judgment, and I did a lot of this work prior to coming to the city of Santa Fe, is that is not the appropriate technology. And more importantly, and more concerning to me, and similar to your concerns, is the plume area is not defined. So I feel like it's very premature to go in and try to treat something when you don't know the extent. So I'm working, we do have a strategic partner at the county, Michelle Hunter, that used to be the head of the Groundwater Bureau. She's helping me navigate through this, but I would certainly welcome any sort of support that, you know, from our governing body to try to maybe fast track the work, because this has dragged on since prior to COVID.
I mean, I can speak for myself. I absolutely 100% have my support, and please let us know how we can get this moving, because I think my hopes are with the Midtown campus is that dirt gets moving quickly and we start building units, housing units as quick as possible. And I'd hate for us to be in a position to where we build and we're building right on top of a toxic plume. And I think so. Love to continue this conversation with you in regards to what the city's plans are, how we are, because I know we have no control on others' property, but we can begin to investigate the matter on our property and begin the appropriate mitigation efforts. I mean, I know that you know, sometimes these plumes travel. You've got to measure them, and I think as we talked about with the Baca Field well, the travel distance wasn't that great. It was, I'm trying to remember, and I don't want to misstate it, but it wasn't that great distance. But when you've got, you know, for example, the chromium plume up in Los Alamos, that travels at a greater distance, greater speed.
Right.
And we need to ensure that we're responding appropriately and accordingly. And so definitely would like to continue this conversation with you, because it's imperative that we figure out what's going on before we develop that campus and might put folks in a very compromising situation. And I don't anticipate that, but I want to make sure we are triple checking given the circumstances. So thank you. I really appreciate that. No other questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Councilor Romero Worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Schneider, for coming and giving this presentation. Will we get a copy of this?
I will provide one.
Great, because it's super hard on. I mean, if I were at home looking at my iPad, I'm sure you can see it really well, but these screens at a distance, difficult to see some of the details. So that'd be great. I just want to let you know that as I am currently the vice chair of the Buckman Direct Diversion Board, and we do meet with the Environment Department once or twice a year. I think we've been trying to do that a little bit more, but I wanted you to know that I did bring up the Baca Street well with Environment Department staff. And so don't know if that had any bearing on them and what you all have been doing and getting some movement on that. But I just wanted you to know I did speak with them about it. So if there's anything else we can do, certainly I agree. Let us know. I am a little bit concerned that there's this idea that it's okay. So this plume at the College of Santa Fe, obviously not good. You said it's not impacting our current city wells. Are we evaluating what its impact is on the above ground building situation?
Chair, Councilor Merrill-Worth. So in the case of are you specifically asking about the water
The city.
division? We have not made basically a determination as to should we invest funding to explore the nature and extent of a plume that we don't have a liability for. But maybe to the insights that this committee shared with me, my thinking maybe is that investment may be very well worthwhile. And as this program matures, we could always recoup that expense down the road under the environmental programs. So that again, maybe if that's something that this committee wishes for us to explore, I could prepare a work plan with basically locations for sampling on this former College of Santa Fe location and the cost and bring it before the governing body to weigh in. I'd be very happy to do that.
Yeah, I feel like you should be working with the Midtown staff and consultants, and I assume you are.
Yeah, we had been, because there had been environmental work done on Midtown, phase 1 and a phase 2. There's a former landfill, I guess you're probably aware of. But this is sort of a new development. And again, we have no knowledge that there could be the plume there, but as Councilor Garcia noted, it is essentially right next door. The general groundwater flow direction is away from Midtown. So
Okay, and that's kind of critical.
So that's one very sort of key piece.
Mhm.
But in terms of risk and vulnerability, when we pump city wells, we do shift the hydraulic gradients and have the potential to force migration in unnatural directions.
Right. All right. Well, I guess I would encourage you to express these concerns with the team at Midtown to better understand, what the risk, do a risk assessment and what our appropriate action should be. I'm not sure this committee, I think could hear that evaluation and mitigation strategy, but I think working with the Midtown team is the right place to start. And I don't want to leave the impression that we would be building on a toxic site. So I think it would be good to clarify exactly what's happening and what work's being done and what work we need to be doing. So.
Understood. And I will follow through on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, no further questions or comments. So thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. Thank you for being here. No action items for discussion, no executive session, matters from staff. Director Wheeler.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Yes, I did want to take a few moments to introduce the Public Works and Utilities Committee to a few new members of the Public Works team. We've had some great professionals join us lately, and I just really wanted you to meet them. Mike Damelin is heading down towards the podium, so I'll introduce him first, and he actually arrived 4 months ago or something. Recently. So this is Mike Damelin, a professional engineer. He's leading our traffic operations team. So he's responsible for our streetlights, our signals, signal timing, our intersection designs and safety, striping, signage. And he really has deep, in-depth knowledge about all of those things. We're super excited. He's taking on the next phase of the streetlight conversion project with PNM now. and really making a difference in the design of like Cerritos Road that we're working with DOT. And so we're really, really happy to have Mike here. He's just working really hard, Boundless Energies, working with the Rail Runner about fixing their arms that keep malfunctioning. And so he's been digging in on that. And so we're just really happy to have Mike. He comes here from Virginia this time. He was working for Virginia DOT for a while. But maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike. Super happy to have you.
Sure, council members, or I'm sorry, it's first meeting. I'm from actually Eastern Arizona, the White Mountains, so I'm not new to the region. But then I spent about 10 years in Virginia. I was originally going to be a meteorologist, so quite a career change here in transportation, but always loved Santa Fe and glad to be back out west. So look forward to meeting you guys or having more conversation.
Thank you, Mike.
Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you.
Great. And then I'd like to introduce Gabrielle Chavez, who actually just joined. This is her second week. Gabrielle is the Transit Director of Administration. We are really thrilled to have Gabrielle. She comes with tons of experience from New Mexico DOT, where she's actually been administering a lot of the transit programs there, working a lot with FTA, Federal Transit Administration. And it's a position that's been empty because it was taken away from us 3 years ago. So we just created it, moved a position over, and we're thrilled to have Gabrielle. She's going to help us with our grants. So we'll be able to, realize our the full fruition of our Southside Transit Center and our downtown transit center and improved bus stops and a new service design. And so we're just thrilled to have Gabrielle join us. You want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a native Santa Fean. I was born and raised here. I have an archaeology background. Have worked for a DOT for the past 8 years. Oversaw the FTA grants for the small urban municipalities around the state running transit programs. Just glad to be here, and I hope to do some positive things for the transit service here in my hometown.
Great. Thank you. Welcome. We're glad to have you as well.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And another new member of the team that I'd like to introduce you to is our new Capital Projects Manager. The title really should be Capital Projects Planning Manager. This is Zach McManus. He was living in Albuquerque, but he also lived in Colorado and a bunch of other places. One of our favorite parts of Zach's resume is that he was the mayor of Rico, Colorado for some years. He also served on the planning commission there. He ran the Parks and Recreation Department and tried to instigate a project, like put it all together to put a sewer system in the town. So we knew that he had the background with planning our capital projects. So Zach will be helping with the ICIP compilation, with putting bond packages together, with the reporting on our capital projects. So our capital project dashboard, we've seen some beautiful dashboards here this evening, and we were both taking notes about how to make ours better and more compelling and interesting. And so we're really excited. Zach's going to be sitting over at Siringo with Sam and his team. So he gets a lot of indoctrination to capital projects, but we're working together on, how do you do planning? What are the different types of funding? How can we do better reporting? And, really incorporating, really, we created this process of capital planning that we have, which is really robust now. And now somebody's going to own that process. And that's a really helpful piece of infrastructure in the city. So we're thrilled to have Zach. And would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, pleasure to meet you all today. My educational background is in design, and my professional background that Regina spoke a bit about is in both municipal government as well as private development. So good, well-rounded skill set, I think, to help council advance the city's agenda.
Thank you, Zach. We're lucky to have you as well. So welcome aboard and good luck.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys for staying. And thank you, Mr. Chair. That's it.
Yes, thank you for staying. Appreciate it. Anything, Director Dupuy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As part of a request from you to provide an update, I wanted to update the committee regarding the Paseo Real Water Reclamation Facility corrective action plan. And just to put that into perspective, just a little bit of history and responsiveness that's occurred. The spring of 2003, the facility experienced a biological treatment upset, which resulted in the plant exceeding its permit limits. There was some immediate responses to arrange alternate water sources for the Santa Fe Country Club, and the MRC, which we heard an agenda item about tonight, and tidying up the expenses and costs and billing related to that initial effort. And we implemented supplemental chlorine disinfection that provides for the connected reuse customers to then be able to utilize reliably treated effluent that's within permit limits. Additionally, the design of the UV replacement is underway. That was something that was part of a master plan project that had started being advertised and then procuring the design engineer prior to that treatment plant upset. And additionally, it's worth mentioning that we developed a potential reconstruction project, and the evaluation of that is underway. And this project was added to the ICIP and prioritized within the top 5 projects that are being requested or for funding requests. And the newest updates are related to our shift in focus to supplemental disinfection for effluent being discharged to the Santa Fe River. The most recent is we went to visit the Denver Metro Water Recovery Facility. It's a 130 million gallon a day treatment facility. It's 10 times the size of our plant. They happen to use peracetic acid for supplemental disinfection. And it was clear that there is significant effort and complications in accomplishing that. And we did a lot of research beforehand, thought it was a great solution, went to a site visit, and then it was clear it's not the answer for us. So that was Wednesday, September 13th. Thursday, September 14th, we submitted a request for emergency procurement for support in implementing supplemental chlorination disinfection, which we have a lot of good data on relative to the reuse customers and our implementation of chlorination disinfection there. So it will give us confidence in our requests to the EPA, which we are meeting with them on September 28th to discuss our desire to implement that chlorination disinfection. So we feel confident they'll be receptive, and we look forward to having some resolution to it once we get some approval and can implement it.
Any questions for Director Dupuy? Thank you for the update. Appreciate it. We get, especially Councilor Lee Garcia and I get questions almost daily about this. So
Understood.
appreciate the update. Matters from the committee. Just one thing, Director Wheeler, I went by Swan Park last night about 9:30. The gates were locked. Thank you. Much appreciated. But the lights for some reason are not shutting off when they're supposed to. So I don't know what's going on with that system, but may need to take a look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. With that, our next meeting is Tuesday, October 10th. We are adjourned.